And the Bush administration's counterterrorism advisor. And until 2003, he was an advisor to the president for cyberspace security. In the past, he warned of attacks by Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden. Accurate analysis on his part. Now he's written a new novel warning of the dangers of cyber terrorism. It's entitled Breakpoint. Richard Clarke joining us from New York right now. Thanks very much, Mr. Clarke, for coming in.
Good to be here, Wolf.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the book in a moment, but I want to pick your brain on Iraq. You used to be a good analyst as far as that part of the world is concerned. Is the president's plan going to work?
No, I think the president's plan just delays the inevitable. At some point, whether it's next year or 2 years from now or 5 years from now, all U.S. major combat units will leave Iraq. And when they do, there's going to be chaos. We've created that situation for ourselves, and there's nothing that we can do, in my analysis, between now and next year or 5 years from now that will change that outcome. So the only thing that happens by staying on another 2 years and putting more troops there is that more Americans get killed and more Americans get maimed.
So what should the U.S. do? Just simply pull out and say there's nothing the United States can do and leave?
No, I think there's a vast middle ground, and people like to say you're either in favor of staying forever or you want to cut and run tomorrow. I think what we can do without major U.S. combat units is to use intelligence units, is to use special forces units, is to have an over-the-horizon presence which can go in when necessary to stop, let's say, al-Qaeda from creating a sanctuary out in Al-Anbar. We have an obligation to continue our rebuilding effort and our assistance effort. There are all sorts of things that we can do short of having 160,000 combat troops there. And I just am not convinced that having 160,000 combat troops there is doing any good whatsoever. It is, of course, providing targets. And we've had 3,000 Americans killed, and just as bad, 2,000 Americans have become double amputees. I think an awful lot of the people who are fighting us over there are fighting us just because we're there. And if we left, a vast amount of the fighting would go away if we pulled out the combat units.
The administration argues that if the U.S. were to leave too quickly, a whole new generation of Osama bin Ladens, of al-Qaeda operatives who are being trained in the Al-Anbar province right now in Iraq would have that kind of Afghanistan-like sanctuary, and they would come out and kill a lot of Americans.
Well, only if we let them, and there's absolutely no reason why we would let them. You don't have to have U.S. combat troops in Al-Anbar to stop al-Qaeda from building up in Afghanistan there. You can use intelligence forces, you can do special force raids, you can do bombing, you can have a political settlement with the Sunni sheikhs in the area and ask the Jordanians and the Saudis to be part of that. This dichotomy, this false dichotomy of either we have two Marine divisions out there or al-Qaeda takes over is just not very analytical.
I want you to listen to what the top Republican in the Senate, the Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, told me on Sunday. Listen to this.
What we do know has been extremely successful, and the principal reason for going on offense after 9/11 in Afghanistan and Iraq was to protect us here at home. That part of the war on terror has been 100% success. We've not been attacked again for 5 years.
He says the Bush administration deserves a lot of credit for that. What do you think?
Well, I say the bureaucracy does deserve credit for not allowing another attack, but it has nothing to do with the fact that we're in Iraq. If anything, the fact that we're in Iraq makes it more likely another attack will occur because we're making more enemies and we're not concentrating on reducing our vulnerabilities here at home. You know, frankly, if you're worried about terrorism, the thing to do is to get out of Iraq and go after bin Laden, go after al-Qaeda, reduce our vulnerabilities here at home, not to stir up the hornet's nest by being in Iraq. They're not related.
Your new book, Breakpoint, is a novel, but it does show a very chilling picture of what a cyber attack against the United States could result in. How worried should we be that the picture that you paint in Breakpoint could actually occur?
Well, experts for about the last 8 years in the Clinton administration and in the Bush administration, experts have been saying that the United States is very vulnerable to attack in cyberspace. What's that mean? It means your Situation Room, the one in the White House, the American banking system, the American aviation system, the electric power grid, they all depend upon computer networks. And all of those computer networks are vulnerable to attack by hackers, by terrorists, by foreign powers. A major Chinese general said that if ever there were difficulties between us and China, China would attack the United States through cyberspace and pull the plug on our electric power grid.
So is this something we're prepared for? Does the U.S. government right now have the wherewithal to deal with what could be a huge Katrina-like disaster?
No, absolutely we don't. We have plans, we have recommendations from presidential commissions, but we haven't done very much. And what I tried to do in Breakpoint is to project you forward in the form of a political thriller into an environment 5 years from now where we're even more dependent upon computer networks and other technologies, and then somebody starts going after those technologies. And we find that the society really can't hold together without those technologies.
I've known you for a while. You've been warning of this threat for a long time. Why isn't the federal government ready? You've suggested in the past this is another FEMA waiting to occur.
Well, I think it is because we're diverted by things like Iraq. It's because some people in the federal government think that because it's never happened, it never can happen. But that was true of 9/11. 9/11, attacks like that in the United States had never happened. Unfortunately, that didn't stop it from happening.
Richard Clarke is the author of a novel entitled Breakpoint, really a thriller indeed. Let's hope none of that actually ever happens, but serious source for concern. Thanks very much for coming into our Situation Room.
Thank you, Wolf.